address and that came to the Eastern Washington University faculty address for me, both were mailed from Oakland, California. And so, 2 pieces mailed from Oakland and 1 piece of mail that got dropped off at the post office. Again, it seems highly unlikely that an individual that had a key could have been at 2 places at once or would have flown to Oakland to mail those last 2 pieces. I think that's kind of reaching. So,
were any of those other letters from Oakland, did any of those end up in the P.O. box, your P.O. box up there?
No. In fact, we had a mail forwarding process where if mail would go to the P.O. box, because that box was closed down after the first incident, it would be sent to the Main Street address but the piece of mail actually got delivered directly, was addressed to 25 West Main Suite 239. And the postal worker that delivered it, I had a conversation with him, and he said that it looked suspicious, and he kind of wondered about putting it in a box, but he went ahead and did it anyway, and asked me if in the future, if he sees something that looks like that again, if he should just keep it at the post office. And I said, please do. And he said he'll do that and then put just a note in our box that they got a suspicious piece of mail.
There have been other hate crimes committed against you and your family that have not resulted in an arrest. Do you think that the police department is trying hard enough to get to the bottom of who's terrorizing you?
I'm not sure, and when it comes to the formality of deciding what a hate crime is, I really tried to let the police make that decision. So in the case of the mail, I called Crime Check, not 911, and described what happened, and they said, this is a hate crime, we're dispatching an officer to you to pick up the evidence. In the situation, one of the situations in North Idaho where my 2 sons were out in the garden and saw a noose hanging from the rafters, or what looked like a noose of rope that hadn't been there prior. The officers came and they actually listed that as a hate crime toward me and my sons at that particular point. And so, I really don't want to speculate on what which particular incidents have been hate crimes and by who, because certainly there's been no conclusion in any of these incidents that have resulted in a suspect, and that is highly frustrating. It's been a stretch of years, and certainly no small amount of stress for my kids as well as myself. So I would love to live in a world where hate crimes didn't exist, and I could assure my children that we're safe and nothing will happen in the future.
I guess with regard to the noose on the rafters, that turned out not to be a noose later on.
I don't know that that's been concluded.
It's actually a rope that was used to hang up a man's fella's deer whenever he killed deer.
Well, I read that in your article, but that was never told to me at the time. And in fact, when we moved into that particular house, that rope was not there. My sons discovered it that morning when they were picking strawberries in the little raised beds. So, people will go to all kind of lengths to minimize or discount or undermine stories. I certainly don't believe that there's conclusive evidence that was not put there, to intimidate or harass, and that certainly wasn't the first appearance of a noose at a residence that we lived at. So
that was one of 8 times that you had problems. You were victims of a hate crime in North Idaho.
Again, whether I don't know that it's 8 hate crimes decided by the police, but there were 8 incidents where we were harassed. Yes.
I'm sorry to hear that. You were the first to notice, hey, there's no canceled stamps on this envelope that was up in the P.O. box. There's no barcode. You kind of knew right off the bat that this probably didn't come through the mail. Mm-hmm. And so when you hear it comes down, they kind of exonerated the postal employees that put it in there.
Right.
And now it's kind of like a key holder thing. If somebody said, if it's a key holder and there's only a couple of people have the keys, maybe one of the key holders did it.
Well, again, I don't have any reason to believe that. And I actually wasn't the first person to notice that. One of my friends who came over to the house to kind of be supportive right after I received the mail, I posted something on Facebook, like, don't know what everybody else got in their mail today, but I'm really shaken up by this particular package. And some of my friends said, we want to come over. And so one of my friends, Tanya, came over, and at that point, when the officer arrived, he was looking at it, and she's like, that doesn't have a stamp on it. In fact, if you look at it, there's no barcode, and so she's the one that first noticed that, but certainly it was noticed prior to the investigation.
If people hear that you have a key and they know that you've been victimized before, what would you say to the folks that say maybe you put that letter in there because you were one of the people that have the keys to do so?
I don't know that I even have any words for that, because as a mother of 2 black sons, I would never terrorize my children, and I don't know any mother personally that would trump up or fabricate something that severe that would affect her kids. My son had slept for 2 weeks in my bed after we received that particular package, and he's 13 years old. That's the kind of terror that I, as a mother, and my son, as a black male, 13-year-old in Spokane, never needs to experience. And the slightest implication that I would perpetrate terror toward my kids is, at best, offensive, but I don't know how that would be a conscionable statement that anybody could live with or believe.
And Rachel, despite these threats that started many years ago, you continue to go out and fight for equality and civil rights, and you're not going to be scared off from doing this.
No, I'm not. This is something that I've actually cared about since I was a young child, and I've been involved with social justice work since middle school, high school, college. It's part of my life work. So, some people might think that it actually, I've heard people say something about, oh, well, you get publicity from these hate crimes, and I think that's very sick as well, because that's not the kind of publicity anybody wants, is publicity of a negative and terrorizing scenario, especially death threats and photos of lynchings. And as a Black Studies professor, I know what these images mean and take them very seriously, given the history of racism in the United States.
Speaking of that, did your dad ever make it to Spokane in January for the ribbon cutting?
No, actually, he has unfortunately has bone cancer and was not able to get cleared for surgery, and so.
God, that sounds like a terrible break for you. I'm sure that he would have been very proud of you. Is that your dad?
Yeah, that's my dad.
This man right here is your father? Right there?
Do you have a question about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I was wondering if your dad really is an African American man.
That's I don't know what you're implying.
Are you African American?
I don't understand the question of. I did tell you that yes, that's my dad, and he was unable to come in January.
Are your parents? Are they white?
I